In the last stream, we were working on expanding out our ore processing system to allow us to automatically process our ores into 10 times the number of ingots. We did that by unlocking the induction smelter here using the new tier 3 production research and by unlocking the ability to actually use that induction smelter to process ores into 10x the number of ingots. Now, we did run into a slight problem right at the end of the last stream, and that is that in order to process the ores in the induction smelter, we have to have a continuous supply of rich slag. And in order to automate that rich slag, we need to infuse regular slag with lava. And currently, the way that we produce lava is using the magma crucible with some cobblestone. This right here doesn't take that much power, but is incredibly slow because of the fact that it takes 300,000 redstone flux to turn one piece of cobblestone into one bucket of lava, and right now, the magma crucible only uses 80 redstone flux per tick. We can make that substantially faster using this pyroconvective loop augment. However, when we do that, it also substantially increases the power required, 10 times as much power, and so right now, we don't actually have enough power being produced to run this magma crucible with that pyroconvective loop. And between streams, I did a little bit of number crunching. And if we wanted to run these 3 induction smelters at full speed, we would need, I think, to be producing about 3,000 redstone flux per tick and using all of that to produce lava. Essentially, what I did here is if we take a look at aluminum, and by the way, we did get this quest complete in the last episode for making the rich slag, which does give us 32 aluminum as a reward. But basically, a little bit of maths here. If we want to process this, it takes 6,000 redstone flux to turn 1 aluminum ore into an aluminum clump. Inside of here, this runs at 20 redstone flux a tick. So you do 6,000 divided by 20. That gets you the number of ticks it's going to take, and then you divide that by 20 again because there are 20 ticks per second. That tells you how many seconds it's going to take. And essentially, I think it takes 15 seconds for 1 induction smelter to smelt 1 aluminum ore, and we've got 3 of them, and so we need essentially 1 rich slag every 5 seconds. And then doing the same kind of number crunching with the magma crucible, if we wanted to run it at full speed, we would need about 3,000 RF per tick in this maximum power bit here, which currently we can't get, even if we put both of these augments in. It only goes to 1,600. Of course, we could set up a second magma crucible and use that as well, but I don't think that we necessarily, at this moment in time, have to run all of these optimally. Like, we don't have to run them at maximum speed because of the fact that the whole chain processes into 10 ingots. All we have to do is produce the ingots faster than our research system gobbles them up. So to do that, we of course need more power. And while we could look at making more of these steam dynamos, putting more of the boiler augments in them, and then making more of the regular steam dynamos and putting the turbine augments in them, basically copying this setup that we have here, the dynamo with the boiler augment isn't particularly efficient. You'll see right here that it actually burns through the coal coke surprisingly quickly. And we do have a pretty good surplus of coal coke. We're actually, I think, fully backed up on coal coke over here right now. If we check, we've got 2,048 in the drawer, and then all of our coke ovens are also fully backed up. So we do have some wiggle room, but if we want to make a few thousand redstone flux per tick, which I think is really where we want to be, because also looking ahead here, the next thing that we're going to start working on is deep mob learning, and deep mob learning is going to require quite a bit of power as well. Again, a couple of thousand, I think, redstone flux per tick to get that going efficiently. So ideally, we want to be making, potentially over 5,000 redstone flux per tick before the end of the episode, and trying to do that with the boiler augment dynamos would work, but would tear through our coal coke at a staggering rate. That is where this piece of research right here comes into play, the better boilers. It says matching boilers to turbines is getting a little tedious, especially with how I need to scale up for larger setups. Better boilers is the solution with a multi-block that can take tons of water and burnable fuel to produce a ludicrous amount of steam. So the general idea here is that instead of having this one dynamo that feeds, 3 other dynamos, we can have one big multi-block boiler that we pump water and fuel into, and that's going to produce drastically more steam and is substantially more fuel efficient than having a lot of these boiler augment dynamos, and then we can pump all of that steam into a bunch of different dynamos with the turbine augment. So obviously, the first thing we need to do here is actually unlock this. For that, we need 64 mechanics research and then 16 lots of 8x logistics research. Back over here, none of these are running right now because, again, none of this is hooked up. I have run the cables under here, so all of the item conduits are ready to go. We could start pumping the copper, the iron, and the aluminum around to all of these researchers and all of these machines again, but currently we're also not actually pumping the ores from our train station up into any of these machines, and so if we were to actually turn this on, we would just start to slowly lose iron, copper, and aluminum, which would make it substantially harder for us to build new stuff and expand out. So for the time being, this is turned off, but if we find ourselves getting too low on research before the end of the stream, we'll look at potentially turning it back on. For the time being, though, I think we do have enough to unlock this. We definitely do. Boom and boom. And so now, if we take a look at the quest here, it does tell us what we need in order to build the boiler. It needs a rectangular base with a boiler controller at the center and at least one firebox hatch. It then needs at least 36 boiler blocks, but a maximum of 100 boiler blocks. And then we also need a boiler valve, a boiler vent, and we don't need the boiler pump. We're going to use something different for that, but I think that's basically everything we need. So if we type in boiler, we are going with the better boilers mod. So actually, if I type in @better, this is the better boilers mod. And although we could make a smaller boiler, I think we do have all of the resources to kind of max out the boiler right from the start. We're not going to be able to fully utilize a maximum sized boiler just yet because we're not going to be able to move enough steam. But as we go forward, having a max sized boiler is going to make it a little easier for us to expand out and make more power as we go forward here. So basically, we need to start by getting 25 of these fireboxes. These are going to go at the base of the contraption, and thankfully, they're not too difficult to make. It requires 4 stone, 1 kiln brick. The kiln brick is just cobblestone and coke brick. Coke brick, of course, is just cobblestone and stone. Super easy stuff. The only hard part here, really, or the only expensive part, I should say, is the steel plates. And so for that, let me quickly see if we have any steel plates in the system. Also, whenever I restart the game, it always re-enables JEI search, which is not what I want, but we can disable that. We don't have any steel plates currently. That is fine. We do have quite a bit of steel banked up around here. And so if we're going to make 25 fireboxes, that means we need 100 steel plates, and that is almost certainly going to destroy this engineer's hammer. But that's fine. The engineer's hammer is not particularly expensive. And one more hammer later, we have enough steel here to make those fireboxes. So now it's just a case of grabbing some cobblestone, which we have 2,048 of, and some regular stone, which we also have now fully backed up on as well. And then in here, we can do this and this. That's going to get us a bunch of the coke brick. I will make just a little bit more, and then we'll drop all that cobblestone in. And then from there, we should be able to make quite a bit of kiln brick here. We're probably not going to need 64, but it's nice to have nonetheless. And boom, 28. 28 is too many, but I think that is fine. So we do need 1 firebox hatch. This is made with iron ingots and iron bars. Easy enough. And then we also needed a controller as well, that being this guy right here. This is 4 fireboxes with a block of redstone and 4 steel. We don't have the block of redstone, but we do have the redstone to make that happen. And so now I think that we might actually be good to go here. I think we might actually be missing 1 firebox. So I am going to build this on here, but we are almost certainly going to have to move this at some point in the near future, especially when we unlock like the arc furnaces and the crushers, and we have to use this space for ore processing. But for the time being, we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. And we're going to make a 5x5 bed of fireboxes with the controller at the front. And the controller can go anywhere, by the way. I'm just going to put mine here. And we'll put the firebox down, the firebox hatch that is, right on the corner, like this. We are 1 firebox short here, which is unfortunate, but I do think we should be able to make that happen. We just need 1 more steel plate, and boom. So now we need to top this with boiler blocks. And as it mentions in the book here, the maximum that you can put on this base is 100. And for those who are good at math, you'll know that 5x5 is 25, and 100 divided by 25 is 4. So we need to build like a 4 tall set of boilers on top of this. And alongside the boiler block, we also need a boiler valve, and we need a boiler vent as well. The boiler valve is going to allow us to pump steam out, and the boiler vent, I believe, is going to allow us to take water in. I think that's the way those work. The boiler blocks here are not too expensive, actually. You make 16 at a time. They're made with 1 iron ingot and then 8 Constantan plates. And the Constantan plates here, of course, can be made with the engineer's hammer or with the metal press. And Constantan is an alloy between nickel and copper. So copper we of course have a staggering amount of, but nickel we don't have that much of, and we're actually down to our last ore on this. And so I think what we're probably going to want to do is grab our seismic reader and probably move around one of our drills, probably this one right here that's getting gold, to a chunk that has nickel. All right, so I've just moved this one chunk over. It turns out that this chunk here does have a little bit of nickel inside of it and even more gold ore. And thankfully, the Invar drill head here is quite fast. So the nickel is coming in pretty quickly. Of course, as per usual, I will put one piece of nickel away, and then we can put the others into the general purpose ore processing setup, this one right here. And we do have, I think, a little bit of rich slag, or at least we do have the ability to make a little bit of rich slag now that I mention it. So if we just grab some regular slag out of here, we can put that in like so. We can also do this as well to make this fluid transposer just that little bit faster, and then we can start putting that rich slag in over here to process that nickel ore into 10 times as many nickel ingots. Now, whilst we kind of wait for the nickel to come in, and whilst we wait for the rich slag to get produced, one thing we do need to set up is the moving of all of our ores from the storage drawer setup that we have downstairs to their respective induction smelters. Even though we're not actually producing the slag right now, so we can't actually get this to work, we could do with actually sending those ores over so we can get everything back online. For that, we kind of just need to run an item conduit, right? So if I go ahead and take some of these, we do have this item conduit here that runs down and connects to the draw controller that is by the station where everything gets dropped off. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that is already set to extract. It is. It's set to extract and always active. Now, the trouble that we run into doing it this way, where we have the one cable pulling from the controller, it can do it and it can pull all of these, but it means that we're pulling all of the different ores on the same channel. And up here at the top, we kind of want to send those ores to different places. And so that is where I think it's probably best that we finally invest in conduit filtering. These are going to allow us to filter at the outputs of the conduits. So essentially, we're going to have item conduits like here that go into the induction smelter, and on the insert side, there is space here for a filter. We can essentially extract from the controller downstairs, and then up here, we can have this set to insert, but if we filter it specifically to copper ore, despite the fact that it's on the same channel as the iron ore, only copper ore will be able to go into this setup. The Twitch chat does also make a good point that we could also do a similar thing where we just have a second storage drawer up here. Right now we have like this drawer here and the other drawers downstairs. I could just put another storage drawer right here. In fact, I think I have at least one marble drawer spare. If we were to instead do this and then just send the copper here, of course, if this was locked to copper ore, the copper ore could only go there. The filters are useful. My only concern with the filters is that, again, we're not actively producing research and we don't have that much left. In fact, I was going to say, I thought we had more than 5 logistics research left. We totally do. I might have to hold off on that then, because we do need to unlock LP fluid conduits. Like, that's non-negotiable. And so we'll unlock that and that. And we also do need to unlock the HP fluid conduits as well here. So we'll get both of those unlocked. Those are going to allow us to actually pump water into the new boiler and pump steam out of it at a reasonable rate. And with both of those purchased, we actually only have 8 mechanics research left, which is not enough to get the conduit filtering. So we do need to get this back online, but I guess for now then what I will do is quickly go ahead and just make a couple more of these frame drawers and then just run the item conduit from over here, most likely under the floor, round to these drawers and have each drawer locked to a different ore. Okay, so I've dug out the tunnel to where the item conduits are going to run, and just as a heads up for those who are not familiar with Ender.io conduits, one really nifty thing that you can do with the conduits here from Ender.io is you can actually bundle them into one block. So right here, if I right-click the item conduit onto an energy conduit, it's going to kind of just cover up that energy conduit, and you'll see that they both run inside of the same block. And so we can run this all the way around and then up like that. And right here, we're of course going to shift left-click with the Yeta wrench and set this to insert like so, and that's going to start filling up with the copper ore from downstairs. I've gone ahead and unlocked this drawer to copper ore, this drawer to iron ore, and this drawer to aluminum ore. And yeah, now it's going to run this same cable around to all of the drawers and make sure all of them are set to insert so that they all get their respective ores. One thing you do have to bear in mind, of course, if you shift right-click, it's not going to place them on. You have to right-click without shifting. If you shift, it'll do what I just did there. But we do have to watch out, because if you have other item conduits nearby, they will connect. For example, over here, we've got an item conduit that's going to connect right there. And we can just right-click to disconnect it, of course, but we just want to make sure that that doesn't connect to here, right? We want to keep those separate. Nice. So now that those are all connected, getting out of here is going to be a little bit of a pain, but that's fine. What we can do now is we can go and check up on how much nickel we have. I did move a bunch more of the rich slag over, and so yeah, we're getting the nickel coming in nice and quickly. Fantastic. And one other thing that we can do here is we could hijack one of these induction smelters, potentially even this one right here, to make the Constantan, because the induction smelter, unlike the alloy kiln, can be sped up. And so what I might go ahead and do, because I think we already have enough nickel now, is we can take this nickel and this rich slag out and save both of those for later. We could take a stack of nickel, place that in here. We could take a stack of copper, place that in there. This recipe doesn't require any slag, and so if we just do this, that's going to start producing Constantan. Nice. And I did move over this reception coil, but we could potentially take this one step further and make another one of these hardened upgrade kits. Of course, it would be too easy if we just had all of the required ingredients right out of the gate. Instead, it looks like we are fully out of tin here, which is also not particularly great, although we do only need one tin ingot. And so if we just quickly, again, hijack one of these furnaces, we can take that, and then back over here, we can do 3 copper and 1 tin. That's going to get us enough bronze to make 1 bronze gear, and then we can upgrade this with a hardened upgrade kit, which is going to, I think, double the speed at which this works, thus making it just substantially faster at making the fairly large amount of Constantan that we're going to need for this boiler. So let's do this, and then let's put back in all of the copper and all of the nickel, and now it's using 80 redstone flux per tick instead of 40. We can actually go ahead and put another one of the reception coils in as well to give us just that little bit of a boost to production. And now it's gone from 80 up to 120, so a further 50% increase, and now we're making this a lot faster. Of course, this is not what we want to do. We want to make sure that that is not set to output temporarily, because we don't want to turn all of our Constantan into Constantan dust. Thankfully, this is currently backed up making nickel still, but we do want to make sure that all the Constantan stays in ingot form, and then we can take that Constantan and then, I guess, either run it through one of these metal presses over here, but again, the hammers are not that expensive to make, and so I think from a speed perspective, I'm probably just going to use some of our iron to make more hammers, and then use the hammer to craft down all of the Constantan plates. Alright, so if my calculations are correct, I think we need just under a stack of Constantan ingots. I think 56 is the actual number that we need, and so 58 should be perfect. Let's do this and this. That gets us 64. We can start putting these down over here, and of course our wand is going to make our lives a little easier. Don't ask me why they are yellow in my inventory and then orange when you place them down. I have no idea, but we want to go 4 blocks tall. That's a little bit taller than what we currently have, so we want to do one of these, and then we just want to bring that all the way to the front. Of course, to make that happen, we are going to need to get another batch of boiler blocks here, but once we have, ideally, all of them, there we go. Sometimes that doesn't like it when you try and close it, reopen it, and do the same craft. But anyway, let's do this and this. Nice. We made a few too many, but we do have to craft up a few more things, that being the boiler valve. This does require 2 buckets. We could, if we wanted to, try and cheese the quest book to get those 2 buckets for free, but I don't think it's worth the hassle. Let's just do this, and then the boiler vent is a similar recipe, just requiring even more iron bars, and boom. So if we go and check here, it does tell me what these are used for. The boiler valve takes water in and can be pumped directly into. Okay, so the boiler valve, that being this one, is where the water is going to go in. And so for the time being, I'm going to put that right on the back like this. That means that the boiler vent, this one right here, is where the steam is going to come out of. And so I'm going to put that right at the front like this. And so essentially, what we need to do is we need to pump the coal coke into the firebox hatch. If I open this up, there is a tank for water, a tank for steam, and areas for fuel. We can put coal coke directly into here, like this, and we can also pump coal coke in automatically via the firebox hatch, which we're going to do in the same way that we've done for everything. We're just going to run the conduit over and connect it up on the black channel. Yeah. Then on the back, that is where we need this aqueous accumulator. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and tear down our current system and steal this aqueous accumulator. We're going to place it down right about here. Now, we could use this fluid pump, but for this setup, I don't think the fluid pump's going to be fast enough. In fact, even the new conduits that we've unlocked are also not fast enough to fully utilize the potential of the steam boiler. If we want to fully maximize the usage of the steam boiler, we're going to have to unlock these high pressure pipes, but to do that, we need even more research, including 24 production research, which we currently have. So over in this quest here, it does go through some numbers, and it tells us that the maximum amount of power that you can generate using one maximum size boiler is 10,000 redstone flux per tick. That's 10,000 redstone flux per tick pumping into 10 steam dynamos that have the reinforced upgrade. The reinforced upgrade is the next tier after the hardened upgrade. We do have to unlock that as well with dynamos, these ones here, to increase the efficiency or increase the power output of those dynamos. So there's a couple of bits of research that we still have to unlock in order to maximize our power output, in order to get that 10,000 redstone flux per tick. But I think today we should be able to get this online and hopefully producing somewhere close to 5,000 redstone flux per tick without any of those upgrades. So at least a few thousand RF, hopefully enough to get all of our ore processing back online. So for that, we're going to need more water than this fluid pump can provide, and so we need to get fluid conduits. The fluid conduits are just like the item conduits and the energy conduits from Ender.io. The medium pressure ones here are made with Invar and glass, and these can just move more than the low pressure ones, and so are better. If we put one down right about here, we can set the bottom one to extract, always active, and leave this on insert. And then inside of here, we should now be able to see that this is full of water, and it's combined the coal coke with the water to produce steam. Once that is set up, all we then need to do is kind of steal these dynamos, which I think, can we shift right click with the Yeta wrench to pop these off? We can't. I think if I was to get a crescent hammer, which is kind of the Yeta wrench from thermal expansion, I think with this, I can shift right click to pop those off. I can. It's just a little bit faster than doing it with the pickaxe, and it also allows us to rotate these as well. So if you put it down incorrectly, you can then use this to rotate the direction, although I'm pretty sure that also works with the Yeta wrench as well. It does. Cool. So let's do this and this, and then all we're going to do is extract from here down and into these guys. So we want this one here set to extract, always active, and then this one set to insert. We can then use our conduit probe here to shift right click on this conduit and then right click on this one so that we don't have to redo the same configuration every single time. Speaking of which, let's get one more batch of conduits here, place that down like so, right click with the conduit probe, and now all of these are receiving steam at their maximum amount, and this is doing its job. Good stuff. So what I am going to do now then is I'm going to make some more dynamos. I am going to make some more turbine augments as well, which shouldn't be too bad. Copper's easy enough, iron, redstone. I don't know how we're doing on gold at the minute. We've got a little bit of gold in ore form, and we've got 54 more actually there in ingot form, which is nice. I guess the real gold though is over here. We've got a ton of gold in this chest that we just moved. Yeah, loads of gold in here. Perfect. So obviously I need to get power reset up because right now this setup here isn't working because this is running out of power and therefore can't get through the backlog of nickel. But ideally we do want to get this gold processed as well so we can make more electrum and therefore make more turbine augments. On top of that, it would be ideal if we could get the dynamo augments unlocked, because without the dynamo augments, we're just going to have to make more dynamos to get more power, which is not ideal. And obviously in a super ideal world, we'd also get the reinforced upgrade kits here as well. So what I might have to do then is see about getting the red research back online. We've got 8, which means we need 24 more. We can, of course, as we've done before, steal these speed upgrades and move them back over to the mechanics research. Like this and like this. And then right now, what is it that we're missing on this? I think it is copper. Yeah, we're missing the copper coil blocks here. And for that, it's just copper that we don't have. And so let's go ahead and get this back online. We'll say extract on the orange channel. Always active. That should bring this back online and should start producing stuff again. Steel is somewhat backed up. We've got like 200-ish steel backed up over here, and of course all of these slots are also backed up as well. We've got a stack of steel gears ready to go, so hopefully that is going to somewhat quickly produce the other 24 mechanics research, at which point we can squeeze just a little bit more power out of our steam dynamos. While we wait for that to happen, like I said, I'm going to make more steam dynamos and more turbine augments. Alright, so a little bit of time later, we did have to reset up the redstone drills. I haven't actually moved the drill that was making redstone. It just needed more fuel, and I've temporarily added a second drill as well, and moved the invar drill head over here, because although it's for higher tier ores, it can also mine lower tier ores at a faster rate, and it turns out we need a lot of redstone for all of the different augments and upgrades that we're wanting to make. In the time that it took me to make a bunch more dynamos, I've made 10 in total, by the way, so over here, I love getting on the concrete, it's so much faster. Over here we have 10 steam dynamos. All of these have a turbine conversion augment. This is where we needed a lot of that redstone to make all of these redstone conductance coils, but all of these are now ready to go. I'm also going to go ahead and make 8 more of these hardened upgrade kits. I did just make some more bronze over in here to get all of these bronze gears, and so I think we should have exactly 8's worth. Again, redstone is the limiting factor, but we do have enough, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now all of these are upgraded, and without the dynamo augment, they can all produce a maximum of 240 redstone flux per tick, which means in total, we can produce 2,400 redstone flux per tick if all of these dynamos get all of their steam, or get like their maximum amount of steam. Now, we can of course take that further if we get the dynamo upgrade. Over here, we have 38 of the mechanics research, and so we should be able to unlock the dynamo augments, boom and boom, and with that, I'm hopeful that we can now make a couple of kind of the same augments that we've been making for our machines, but for our dynamos, that being this one right here, the auxiliary transmission coil. This increases the power generation of a dynamo. It requires basically a lot of silver and redstone. So ideally, I want 10 of these, right? One for every single one of our dynamos. Whether or not we're going to have enough redstone for that is TBD. Apparently we do. And boom, nice, cool. Okay, so if we put one of these in, it does increase the amount of steam used, and so we do have to produce more steam, but I'm hoping that we are producing enough to make that happen. It only goes up from 120 to 150, but the power goes up to 300 redstone flux per tick. And so with all of these installed, we should now be able to produce 3,000 redstone flux per tick. You'll see right now we're not producing that. The reason for that is basically that as the dynamos fill up on power, as their buffer fills up, they just start producing less and less power because there's nowhere for it to go. So right now, we could produce more power, but there's nowhere for the power to go, so it just sits in the dynamo. We can hopefully try and change that. First step, of course, is to start burning a lot of that power on the rich slag production. So over here, let's place down our fluid transposer, and let's place down our magma crucible. I might swap these around, actually, put the magma crucible here with the fluid transposer beneath it. This, of course, is going to start turning the cobblestone into lava. Let's put in the pyroconvective loop, and let's also go ahead and make another one of the auxiliary reception coils, which is going to require yet another one of those coils. Thankfully, we did process quite a bit of gold while we were waiting for our research to process, and so boom, there's another coil. Let's drop you in like so, and together, these are using 1,600 redstone flux per tick, and that should just be fine. That should be close to half of what we're producing, but that's not going to be a problem. We can then, of course, make sure this is set to input from the top, which is blue, and then output to the bottom. I think I will go ahead and make another one of these 16x or 8x cobblestone generators to allow us to auto-produce cobblestone here, as opposed to relying on the cobblestone that's all the way over on the other side of the base. And then all we need to do now is set up a loop for the slag. So I think we probably want to get maybe like a stack of slag, because the slag is reused, so it doesn't actually get used in the process. So if we take 64 slag here, and that is a stack and 39, let me get rid of that. We're going to take a stack of slag, and we're going to put that into the fluid transposer, that being right about here. We then need to set up an input and an output on the fluid transposer. So we'll set the left to input. We'll also set the top to input as well, because that is where the lava is going to come from the magma crucible, of course. So we want to put the left side as input, and then we'll make the right side an output on red. And so what we're going to do then is we're going to have an item conduit here, which is set to insert. And I'm going to set that to insert on brown, even though I don't think it matters too much. And then on this side, we're going to go ahead and we're going to extract, and we're going to extract on red. Red's going to be for the rich slag. So the normal slag, which is this stuff here, is going to come in on the brown channel. We're going to extract it from the induction smelter on the brown channel, and then the red is going to go in and out for the rich slag. So for the 900th time today, we can uncover some of these cables here, and it should be somewhat easier for these setups over here because we've already run some cables over. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to put one item conduit here connected to the induction smelter, and we're going to run the item conduits over here, across, up, and to this. Now what we can do with our Yeta wrench is we can, of course, shift left click on this one, and we're going to set this to insert on red. And then ideally we'd set it to extract on brown, but I don't think that's going to work. So inserting on red is fine, because that means that in here we can set the bottom to input, and that should start to receive rich slag if everything is set up correctly, and this is set to always active. It does, nice. Of course, we do want to make sure this is set to round robin so that eventually all of the slag is distributed amongst all of the induction smelters. But the trouble now is that the output here, actually the output might be fine. If I set this bottom to input and output, this might actually be okay. We could then potentially set the bottom here to extract brown, always active, and that should, in theory, and we can test this of course with a single piece of ore, it should use one piece of slag to process the copper ore, then it should pull the non-rich slag out of the bottom of the induction smelter, back around into this side. Of course, we do want to make sure that this is also connected up to this main item conduit line, like so. Fantastic. And so let me take the remaining slag out of there, and let's see if this works. So I'm going to put copper into here. This is going to slowly but surely, over the course of 15 seconds, turn one copper ore into 3 copper shards, and then we should hopefully see the slag that gets produced as a byproduct be extracted and sent back around to here. Nice! And then that gets processed into rich slag, which should then end up back in there. Perfect. Okay, cool. This works. We got 50 slag in there. Fantastic. And so now we just need to get a couple more of these item conduits, and we need to hook up the other 3 induction smelters to the same item conduit line, with brown being set to extract, red being set to insert, and the bottom on all of these being set to this kind of blue-orange hybrid, which is input and output. The Twitch chat does make a good point in that we can probably tidy this up a little bit, actually. If we change this, instead of having 2, we could just go ahead and put 1 at the bottom like that, and if we're going to do that, we might as well do this and save on a couple of conduits. We can get rid of this one and this one, and at that point in here we might be able to set this to insert on brown and extract on red, always active, and that way we can potentially in here make sure that the bottom is set to in and out just like all the other machines, and that should still work but just look a little bit cleaner because of the fact that we're not going to have as many item conduits around. Alright, I think all of that is set up. I think each one of these induction smelters now has an item conduit underneath. I did also set this to round robin again, by the way, so it should be good to go. Right now, all of our slag is in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that out, I'm going to divide that by 3, and I'm going to start putting that back in like this to kind of simulate the round robinness that we would normally have active. And now it should just be a case of setting these to auto input. That should start pulling the aluminum in, and we'll do the same here. So to auto input, that's going to start pulling the iron in, and finally auto input, that's going to start pulling in the copper, which is probably going down a little bit here because of the fact, yeah, we're at 1645 because we've been using it to make more mechanics research. But I think we should finally have ore processing back online. Everything should be working. All of the slag should be making its way around back to the fluid transposer once it is produced, getting turned back into rich slag. And yeah, everything should be doing just fine. Right here, one problem we are going to have is the fact that the LV conduits can only insert 500 redstone flux per tick. So right now, despite the fact that this can do a maximum of 1,600, it can only receive 500 because of this single conduit. However, if we do this, it's now going to go up to 1,000, and if I were to do this, that would be 1,500, and then if I finally did this, although it looks super janky, having 4 conduits on there should allow it to use the full 1,600 redstone flux per tick, and there's really no reason not to. And if we look in here and compare it to the beginning of the episode, you'll see that the usage of the coal coke is just substantially lower. You'll see how slowly this like fuel usage bar is going down. These coal coke stacks are rock solid. Like, it's using so much less coal coke to produce way more power, which is fantastic. The last thing I do actually need to do that I've not done yet is hook this up, because right now we're not actually sending the coal coke over there, and it does have an effect. It mentions it in the quest book, but the way you produce maximum steam is by having all 3 of these with coal coke. So I think this is going to produce more steam than this. And you'll see this third fire lights up there. So we do want to hook that up and get that connected. But even with the stack and a half, or 2 stacks, sorry, of coal coke that we have in here, it's already going to last so much longer than in this initial boiler. And in fact, I do now realize I could have just taken this out and then reused this dynamo instead of making 9 more over here, but that's fine. We got an extra one should we need it elsewhere in the future. All right, and there we go. We also now have coal coke being sent automatically. Again, this right here set to insert on black. And so, yeah, it's being pumped in, and it's using the coal coke just so much slower than it did before. And as I mentioned earlier, although right now we're probably not producing the slag fast enough to run these like all the time, I think we should be producing things fast enough to produce the ingots quicker than the research setup is using them, right? So what I'm going to do is break this, make sure this is set to extract on, I think it's light gray is what we ended up going with for iron, always active. And then over here we can do the same thing, of course, with the aluminum. The aluminum is on, oh no, the aluminum is white. I see. Okay, cool. I need like a board somewhere that has my key set on, so I know what pulls what. But we should now, finally, after a couple of episodes of hiatus, be making everything again. Look at that. Iron is back online, so the basic logistics research is once again going to come back online. Steel is back online, so we're going to start making more steel over here, which is going to start making more coal coke, of course, as well, as we start burning through more of the coal. That is good stuff. All of this is doing its job. Fantastic. So yeah, that is all online. Also, I didn't mention it at the start of the stream, but between streams, I did go ahead and run a storage cable, which goes from this guy over here. It just runs under the floor out to here, and then all the way along under the road, up, and then connects these drawers up, so that now in here we have access to the iron, the copper, and the aluminum without having to go and manually get them from these drawers. And of course, as we go forward, we'll add more cables to this side to add in these drawers as well. So yeah, this is all working as intended, and we now finally actually do have 10x ore processing that is working in our favor. And yeah, hopefully we should see everything working here. Make sure you take out your blockages, Isaac, that you left in earlier. We could try and make these faster, of course, with some augments, but for now, I'm kind of just going to keep an eye on it and see if we are producing the ingots fast enough. Like, obviously right now, they're all going down. I think that's because we're kind of filling up some buffers. For example, over here, this is going to start filling up a buffer. But once, and then obviously over here as well with the blast furnaces, you know, we've quickly taken 3 stacks of iron just to fill up those buffers there. But once all the buffers are full, I think the iron is going to start going down much slower. And I'm hoping that we're producing the iron fast enough to where we have like a net surplus of iron. But we'll have to keep an eye on it and see where it goes. Next time, chat, we're going to come back and we're going to start working on deep mob learning. I do believe we have to unlock deep mob learning via this research right here. And so I might have to, between episodes, just kind of leave this chugging away a little bit. And also, it's going to be very helpful if I put my gearboxes back down, like this and like this. Currently, there's no power going to this, which is not ideal. But what I have done, kind of accidentally, is if you right-click on the tiny energy input hatch, it changes it to a small energy input hatch, and you can kind of just right-click to toggle between those two. Doing so does delete all the power in there, so if you don't want to lose your power, don't right-click it. But when you right-click it and turn it to a small hatch, instead of being able to hold 12,000 RF, it can hold 5 million RF. And so I toggled it to small, left the solar panels on there that we put in a previous episode, let it kind of back up to 5 million, and so now there is a bit of a buffer in there for making research. And also it is receiving some power from this LV wire connector, albeit not enough, but I'm hopeful that, you know, we can go ahead and put in some more of those redstone engineering blocks, and I guess with that we'll get an idea as to just how slowly the power is going to go down, or just how quickly, I should say, the power is going to go down. Let's see, is that going to make stuff? It is. And it looks like it's holding kind of steady, which is surprising. I think that might be right, because I think the only reason it was going down before was because of the fact that we had the 2 speed upgrades in there. But anyway, we'll have to let this chug away until we get 16, so that we can unlock that deep mob learning. Once we've unlocked that, we can actually start to automate a lot of stuff. We can automate diamonds, lapis, prismarine, quartz, all kinds of stuff. With the shulker data model, we can unlock glowstone, which is going to get us that tree farm finally. And we can automate redstone as well, which is going to be huge, because right now, redstone, not super hard to come by, but definitely one of the resources that we don't have a ton of, and we're going to need a lot of it going forward. And even more importantly than that, eventually we can get this infinity drill, which is going to allow us to get an infinite amount of copper and iron without having to continually move drills to new locations, which is also going to be fantastic. But that does also require some automation of deep mob learning. But yeah, those are all problems for Future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Feed the Factory there.